She's the real life version of Mia Thermopolis Renaldi. She started a career as a journalist and is now the Maharani of Vadodara. She's taken on several social campaigns to help people, and more specifically, one that comes to mind is during the COVID pandemic, they supported more than 700 families in Vadodara. She's somebody who is not just royal by lineage, but also somebody who's royal in terms of her actions. She, despite coming from a royal family and despite coming from privilege, continues every day to show us why we should be better versions of ourselves by serving society. There are few role models who are more altruistic than others. It gives me great pleasure and privilege to be able to welcome the Maharani of Vadodara, Radhikaraje Gaekwad. Firstly, thank you for flying in from Baroda and coming in today.
It's my pleasure. I know exactly why I'm here. All my thakan is gone and I'm absolutely energized seeing all these bright smiling faces before me. Thank you for having me.
So, let me start by asking you, all of us have grown up watching Princess Diaries. But you've lived it and you've broken several stereotypes. You've often attributed this to your schooling days. How much of an impact does schooling have in life later on?
Immense impact, Rishabh. But I must confess to you all, I was a loser in school. So I was a backbencher, I was pulled up all the time, late in class, not untidy, never homework in time. So I was one of those students who was avoiding class. Dreading the exams, and even more dreading the report card. So that was school for me. But I had immense moments of joy because of my friends. I had two very close friends, and one of them is not there anymore. She passed away, which is another story, because that's another thing life teaches you, that things don't continue as you want them to and you expect them to. So, but coming back to, so my friends was what school really is for me. If you ask me what was in my syllabus, I might not remember, but I do remember the moments that I had immense learning in school, and I would credit that my journey of exploring or understanding human minds, myself, began at school. Of course, a lot of it came from being almost a single child. My sister and I are 10 years apart in age. So she was in boarding school, I was at home. And which she was very jealous of, because I got to be at home and she was in boarding. But a lot of moments were spent in boredom. So I didn't have that many activities. I was, like I said, I was one of those loser kids who was not doing as many activities. But I spent a lot of time staring at the ceiling, walking in the garden. I had beautiful monuments around where I lived, strolling there, reading, a lot of reading. So a lot of parallel education was happening, perhaps now that I introspect. But so even what I mean to say is that even if you're not really excelling in your studies today, don't give up, because there is no age to have that learning curve, to be able to be inspired, to find your path and purpose. I had no path and purpose in school, honestly. So
basically what you're trying to say is that you don't need to be Hermione Granger and you don't need to be Devi Vishwakumar. You can essentially be a Neville Longbottom and you can eventually land up being Radhikaraje. And the fact that if you have been somebody who's not been the most prolific at something in terms of school and then landed up being somebody like you, I think for all of us, there is a lot of hope. So thank you for so humbly actually stating that. There's a reason why I said there are few people who are altruistic and are very real. And that is why I'm very glad that we have somebody like you who speaks the truth. And that makes it so much more relatable. But, I must ask you this. You said that you had to deal with profound sorrow just a few years ago. And if I may touch upon that briefly. that whenever somebody goes through adversity, at that juncture, and for us, we go through things that we think are adversities, and sometimes we take them a little more seriously than we're supposed to. As someone who's gone through adversity and difficulty not just once but many times, how does one cope with it in context of school children dealing with adversity?
I think so. My big adversity as a school child was losing my grandmother, and I remember that moment so clearly. What I was wearing, where I was, and when you're 12, 13 years old, you're in an awkward age. Your friends are your everything, and everything's perfect. Everyone is alive and happy and young, and you have no real issues. So at that point of time, losing a family member or illness, I had friends who were struggling with mothers who had advanced stage of cancer. There were friends who had failed in exams and were like considering suicide. So life exposes you to so many things even when you are in school, and I'm sure at some point you feel you've been in real adult situations, and the beauty of being in school is that there is a safety net, whether it's family, whether it's your teachers. You have guides to guide you through those paths. Sometimes as adults, you wish you had those guides. You don't, and you can't admit you need those guides. But in your case, you have the safety net. So utilize it. Count on the wisdom of your friends, your spouses. I know are very important, but also your tutors and your family. And life is like that. I'm sure at some point, whether it's a pet, whether it's a family member, one learns to deal with loss.
So your family, your friends were the support system that you had, and friends, of course, are the biggest support system that one has growing up. I must ask you another question, and this has to do with your work with artisans and local traditional craftsmen. We have a very young audience, as you can see, and all of them are taught about service in an IB school through cash being a compulsory part of syllabus, and in other schools like ICSE, CBSE now with curriculum coming in. The idea that selfless service is something that one should inculcate at a very early age is something that everybody who's coming in today believes in. But in your opinion, how should one do that? Because is attributing marks against service the best way to do that? Or should it be a more selfless approach that should be taken towards getting them to believe in selfless service?
I think, compassion or selflessness comes with tutoring also. So you see it, you learn. It's not everyone is born with it instinctively. I'll give you the example of my own daughter. She's now in the 11th standard. And because I work in charity, I felt it is now time for my daughters to at least to experience it, to have the privilege of being of service. And I involved her in a project that she chose. So she chose the project of donating slippers, footwear to people who don't have, especially in summer. So from street children to laborers to elderly people, and that has snowballed into something so beautiful. And we've donated over 1,000 slippers. And this child who's in a boarding school comes for a holiday and just picks it up. And how many people have reached out? So, something I've realized is that there is goodness in all of us, but we don't have the time and the leisure to sometimes tap into it because we don't know where to go. Sometimes we want to do something good, and then you don't find an outlet, and then you get busy doing something else. So it's important to keep your eyes and mind open, and of course your heart open, to find that purpose. And honestly, there is nothing like community. You don't have to do everything yourself. A lot of our education is about being individualistic and excelling on our own, of course. But please understand that community, building and the strength of community is so very essential to be able to cohabit with each other, to understand each other. That compassion comes from community building, from understanding your story, to be able to relate and to be able to handhold you where you may need handholding. And not from looking down on someone, but from understanding each other. And for that, we must build community. So that's what I would say.
Well, very, very well said. You know, what you're saying is so important because, at the organization also, and I was talking to somebody who is a part of the organization, he believes in Seva Bhav. He says, Rishabh, the concept of giving in our country should not be from top to bottom. And Mr. Piramal has done that for so many decades. And he keeps telling me, saying, when you give at that juncture, it should be that you're giving without the expectation of receiving. Now, when you are 13, 14, 15, and 16, at that juncture, to understand these concepts, and like you said, you have a daughter who's in grade 11. And I'm so glad that you gave her example of wanting to do something for community and society. But how do you trigger that thought without it becoming compulsory in school? That is what the thing is, of course, once you make it compulsory, then everybody will do it because, it's compulsory to come and attend or do something. But how do you invoke that in them?
I think you need to be exposed. So I can only give examples of myself or my children. I expose them. So there was a lot of kicking and screaming, and we don't want to go to the slums, and it's our free time, and we want to, whatever they want to do, which is basically sleep at this age. But Hannah, don't you all just want to sleep in your free time? Yeah. So same with my daughters. So to drag them, I think what it is you expose them without any condition of this is what you need to do. It is about you drag them because this is just come and try it out. And I guarantee you, when you see the joy on the faces of people that you are connecting, I'm not even saying giving or saving or helping, just connecting, that is so special. Because we are living in a bubbles. So how do you really know what is happening in another person's life? Bombay alone are so many worlds in one. And you may feel you are connected because you may have house help or you may have, but you're not. You're not meeting one-on-one. So to meet as an equal, you must go to and share space with them, share time with them. And it will come from within, I think, if without any conditions, if you just, but it is an initiative that schools or parents have to take just out of, not for a condition of grades or furthering their credits or.
Correct. I only ask that because there are so many educators with us also. And that's the reason why I touched upon it once again. But one thing that is going to be common amongst all of these young people is that they are, irrespective of going to be an architect or whether they are chartered accountants or lawyers or cricketers, whatever they do in their life in the future, all of them will be leaders in some way or the other. Now, leadership is a trait that is taught both at Harvard Business School and also in school. But leadership is best learned from those who actually led. This is what I fundamentally believe. And now that we have somebody in front of us who's led so many initiatives, what are the leadership lessons you wish you had known? If you had to lecture yourself, or if you had to tell yourself, looking back when you were in school, which you have now picked up?
I think the need to be liked. When I was growing up, I had a need to be liked. That people should like me, people should think I'm pleasant. I should say yes. I've learned to say no. So to be polite but firm about your choices, because it may not match with your vision or priority, is very important. But do it politely. It's very important to be able to communicate consciously. Be very conscious with what you say. So I know when my daughters argue with me, and sometimes I'm really losing it with them. And my younger one, who's really can have a temper tantrums, can tell me something so very firmly, but politely, that I'm taken aback. And it makes me feel, oh my God, my child is showing more maturity than me at this moment. So I think I'm only speaking from her point of view, that when you are able to very clearly say what you want or don't want, but politely, I think a message can go through, and that consistency is important. I think that is one of the first things that I've learned in leadership, to be able to say no and to be able to stand up for yourself. And like I said, again, community building. Because you can't do everything yourself. And you don't have to prove anything to anyone but yourself. So you can be the best that you can, but also see and believe in the best in others. So when you work with others, you learn to trust and establish trust. That is how societies can live in harmony. And that's how generations can communicate cross-generationally. So I would say that clear and conscious communication is the first step to leadership.
And that rightly deserves an applause, because one of the things that I've seen in so many people from diverse walks of life, even if they have the intelligence and they are very intelligible beings, but not having those same communication skills to match the intelligence then leads them to not rise to the positions of being able to inspire people. And therefore, I think about communication, what you said is, of course, very true. But if I were to ask you, apart from communication, and you did mention the fact that, as young people, and even as a younger version of yourself, when you were in school, one of the things that came to your mind was the constant validation that one needs. Now, it's easier, of course, on this side when we say this, but when we're 15, 16, 17 and dealing with teenage daughter at home, I'm sure, when I talk to the organizations also 16 to 22, and I tell them saying that you don't need to go by the number of likes that are there on Instagram. The first reaction is that, but society judges us by the number of likes that are there on Instagram. The need for constant validation from the time you're in school all the way till people reach positions of power exists. And therefore, I understand where you're coming from. But how does a 16-year-old or a 15-year-old actually implement this in their life, saying, you know what, I don't need my friend's validation for ABC. What is your advice to them?
No, Rishabh, this is a question I want to ask the children, because I am struggling with it. I see my daughter, my younger one, sometimes so conscious about what someone has said, about what she's wearing, because her arms may be looking thick, or she will not eat a meal because she feels she's not going to fit. She's 15 years old, and honestly, I don't have that answer. I want to ask you this question, and it's not a most comfortable question to ask, but I am, because I'm facing it as a parent, and I'm sure a lot of you are, and your parents will have something like this to say. But it's such a new generation problem, and you feel that the children are well adjusted. They have, they're being brought up to be confident children. The school is giving them the right education. Where is this insecurity stemming from? But it is there, and that is, I suppose, how social media has pervaded our life, and how we allow other people to dictate how we can feel about it. And sometimes I do feel, as a parent, am I falling short, that I'm not being able to give that self-confidence to my child? But she's a very well-adjusted, happy child. Very sociable and beautiful. But this, my arms are not looking right. I will not wear this outfit, that outfit, and I don't know how common that is.
Well, that is a very common trait. How many of you feel, by a show of hands, that you seek constant validation, or you know somebody who seeks constant validation from their friends? How many of you know somebody at least who seeks validation from others? And what is your advice? Let's take it to them, considering you've asked this question as well. What would you tell your friend who is continuously seeking validation from somebody else for whatever they are doing? If you were to give one piece of advice, what would you give? Anyone? Yes, hi. The boy out there.
I would I would tell them that you don't need to seek validation from others when you can validate yourself. You can judge yourself. You can see whether you look good to yourself, whether you are yourself, and that's what will make you you, and that's what will make you appeal better to others. Thank you.
Oh, super. So, no, what he said is in a way so true. But when it comes to actioning it, it becomes so much more difficult. Then again, yes, you
Yeah,
said.
but one suggestion I do have is that I think if there is any activity you enjoy and you do well in it, it gives you a sense of self and a sense of well-being. I think more children, and I realized that post-lockdown, my daughters and a lot of kids stopped playing. My girls were in team sports. They stopped playing, so the activity is reduced, and then it's very difficult when you're in the 10th standard and all to come back to it. And you lose a sense of activity, employment, a sense of goal, and sometimes these are the activities that make you feel good. You scored a goal, makes you feel good. You've sketched something well, that gives you a sense of self. So I think pursue things you enjoy. Don't just do it for grades.
No, well said. Pursue things you enjoy. Don't do it for grades. You can cut, copy, paste that, and show it to your parents. There was saying that I'm not saying it, that you're not saying it, but there's somebody who came in today who you will regard who's saying this. But I must ask you this also because you're an artist and a philanthropist. You have supported craftsmen, you have done so much for arts and culture. There are young people across who wants to emulate you and want to do a percentage of what you've actually done for art and for society. But who has been your role model growing up, and if you have a role model now, and what are the qualities that you picked up from them, which you would like to pass on to your daughter and to everybody who's sitting out here?
I think I look at my parents as my role models. My father for never giving up, for never taking things just as they are. That, such is life, such is things cannot change. My father's 86, he's won 2 PIS about the Great Indian Bustard, which is at the brink of extinction, and the reintroduction of cheetah. He's the man at the age of 85 who brought the cheetahs back to India after working for almost 40 years on it. So never give up. You learn not to take no for an answer. You find a way, you don't give up. So that's my father. My mother has taught me to remain childlike, to have, to be authentic, to be not ashamed to admit if I don't know something, to be able to embrace myself with all my warts, and to be able to be kind, to have a curiosity to know you, to be able to ask you, well, how was your day and what is your journey like and how does it feel to be you. These are very important connections. So my mother, when I take a plane sometimes, the security person knows me because as so and so's daughter, because आपकी मम्मी आई थी, वो बोल रही थी आप यहाँ रहती हो, उसके छोटे बाल हैं यहाँ है. She's had like full conversation with the security lady in that 2 minutes of risking. So it's so, even as of today, for me, I'm in awe of my mother because she has this childlike energy. So don't lose that. We lose it very quickly. So that is something, stay in touch with.
And in the age of swiping right and swiping left, if I may, it is lost sooner than later. And which is why what you said in terms of the childlike innocence and the naivety that accompanies it, I think was what was displayed on stage even now. Remember when I said Shikhar Dhawan's third cousin? So I think that should forever stay. And I think that is something which I can see abundantly in you. And therefore I'm very grateful that you've made the trek from Baroda and come here. But One of the other things that you believe in, and one of the things that I've learned is that if you don't value where you've come from, you won't know where you're going. The preservation of our culture is imperative. For young people to understand where we've come from is also very important. But today we live in a society that is very fast-paced, and of course, the value systems which our grandparents and our parents wanted us to carry, it becomes very difficult. Just a small example of what I was giving, what I was asking another speaker was, and for the one set of school, the one school that has already heard this, please excuse me for this, but in today's day and age, it's all about valuation for new businesses, and it's less about value creation. It's all about trying to make fast money, and it's not about trying to build society as much. And I don't blame a generation for it. I blame the social media for it, and more than the social media, you've got shows such as Shark Tank, which promote sharks in tanks and not whales in oceans. And there's a big difference, in my humble opinion, between a whale in an ocean and a shark in a tank. But it is important that those values are passed on in a modern way. If you had to enlist some values that need to be passed on to a young generation that is going to be in charge of a Viksit Bharat in 2047, what would be those values that you think that they should carry 20 years from now, such that we are actually a developed society, not by the metric of economy, but by the metric of culture and social fabric?
I think the simplest way of doing it is spending time with your grandparents. I don't know how many of you live close to your grandparents, but that is one of the most beautiful ways of learning about your culture and connecting with the generation older than us. And those first-hand accounts are more touching, are stay better in our memory than any textbook. So I would say, listen to the stories, the carried down tales of your grandparents, whether as bedtime stories. I know you're all past that stage now, but ask them, how was it when they were younger? What was life like? And these important questions will make them feel special, and you will get to know another dimension, not only of your grandparents, but also of what India was. And it's very, we all want to be proud Indians, but what are we really proud of? When we speak as Indians, what are we really feeling proud of? Is it just what you see today? But India is such an old civilization. It goes back thousands of years. So how can you really know your civilization, your country, and be proud of India just on the basis of a few books that you read in your classroom? So that holistic learning and understanding can only come from interacting with the generations previous to you. So that is what I would say.
So make sure that you go and meet your grandparents is the message that we are getting. So today's homework, not that I can give you homework, would be essentially to go and listen to a story from your grandparents. But let me take you back to something that we call Nostalgia Corner, and that we've framed for you. What's the first memory that comes to mind when I say the word summers in Vakaner?
Swimming pool. We had a swimming pool there, and I learned to swim there when my father just was helping me, and I was 12, 13, and I was still not learning how to swim. So he took me and he just left me in the middle. And there I remember a lot of water in my lungs and in my mouth, but that's my, summer was swimming, and a lot of time on the chula with my grandparents, and sneaking and drinking innumerable number of cold drinks. And grandparents don't stop you, na? They let you do what you want. I'm seeing that with my kids. So it was just this overindulgence and a lot of cold drinks and quiet corners. And
yeah. How many of you prefer grandparents over parents? Thankfully, your parents are not here. But that answers it. Raja Ravi Varma and Raja Ravi Varma paintings in the Baroda Palace. What's the memory that is associated with that?
Very, very privileged, and it's an honor to be able to see these paintings every day, to be able to share the space with them. They are extremely beautiful and important works of the artist. But more than anything else, there is a sentimental value. They are images of our family members. They are images of the gods that I pray to, and these are the images that we all have grown up seeing. You know, in all our temples, the image that we have of Lakshmi, Saraswati, Ram, Sita are all paintings of calendar art done by Raja Ravi Varma. So to have those paintings in my house is my greatest blessing. So for many people, they will look at it as a tag, as a label, as a price tag. But for someone who lives in these spaces, you don't look at everything in your house and put a value to it. It is something that you have inherited, is a blessing, and for us, that is what it is.
Alright. And let me take you to the last question in the nostalgia corner. An artist's life story that's touched you.
Annapurna Devi. She was Pandit Ravi Shankar's first wife, and she herself was an incredible artist, and she used to play the sitar beautifully. And but she was not given the opportunity to play because she was a better performer than her husband. And in those days, in society, men did not like women to excel. And she continued to teach but never perform. So I always find her story very moving.
And how times have changed. Now, women are the role models for all the men, as we can see today. But and rightfully so. But let me ask you a small rapid fire inspired by a friend and a mentor. He does it on TV. You know whom I'm talking about? A small rapid fire that he does on TV. And there's no hamper at the end of it. But just to make this light, not a Rajdeep Sardesai conversation or an Arnab Goswami conversation, the first thought that comes to your mind, when I say the following words, school or college?
School.
Maths or science or neither?
Neither.
Yeah, that deserves an applause. A subject you loved?
English.
Some people are very happy, some are like...
Loser.
A teacher or guru you are grateful to?
I had a teacher called Marok Singh. Very quickly, she was incredible. Like I said, I was really this student nobody liked. But she had this amazing thing. I'm just saying this because there are teachers here as well. That she had an anonymous letter thing. That she said that I want all of you to write a problem that you are having in your life and just anonymously give it to me. So we all wrote our problems and she addressed each one, and some of us had written our names but she never said it out loud. But she addressed it in the classroom, and it is so beautiful because so many of the problems that we all go through as kids are in our head are all the same. We all have the same recycled problems, but we won't admit it. So by addressing it in a classroom with all these anonymous letters, I mean, I'll never forget her for that.
I love it. A skill that everyone should hone?
Communication.
What service means to you in 3 words?
Selfless, surrender, divine.
What heritage means to you in 3 words?
Identity, grounding, foundation.
Modernity and tradition?
Balancing act, adapting. It's the only way forward.
I have 3 words for that. Radhikaraje Gaekwad. Yes. When I say India, what's the first thought that comes to your mind?
Pride. For me, India is... You take India out of me, I don't think That's nothing for me. I mean, I'm so Indian, and it comes from layers of past, present, future, cross culture, cross generation. Yeah.
India's identity. Well, when I say the word youth, what's the first thought that comes?
Potential. Incredible potential. Look at you guys, yeah?
And the non-existent hamper depends on the last one. When I say I.I.M.U.N, what's the first thought that comes to your mind?
Efficiency. It's incredible. How do guys do it?
All the time we're spending in the hours of 16 to 22 are actually doing this. I just get to take credit. So, but thank you very much. You know, you are somebody who like I said, modernity and tradition is something that you stand for. There are very few people who are altruistic, who are people who go out of their way to come and do something. Your very presence out here speaks volume.